Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
And that, gentlemen, is not only why the lambada is called the forbidden dance, but also why Ted Nugent is banned from Jiffy Lube for life. Oh, wait, we have people watching. Hi. Hello, everybody. Howdy, Gherkins. Gherkins, we Philadelphians have a word that has no equivalent in any other known language on the planet Earth. And that word is jawn. A jawn can be anything. It can be a noun, a verb, an adverb. It can be a person, a place, a thing, an event. Literally can mean anything. I'll use it in a sentence. Hey, use John's want to jawn on over to Jimmy's John and watch the Eagles John on his new John. Someone actually said that outside Smokey Joe's a couple of years ago. And I was like, whoa. And they non-ironically said that. So that brings us to this week's big question. So what uniquely Philadelphian jawn would you like to take a few minutes to explain to anyone out there who might not be familiar with it? And I will start, and it's good alphabetically. I'm going to start with A. I'm going to start with Alalberts Showcase. There's no apostrophe in there, and that should be your first warning. That was bothering me. Alalberts Showcase was a local variety, and I am using the word variety in its fullest possible sense. It was a local variety show that aired on WPIV Channel 6 here in Philly. It ran for 32 years. It ran from 1962, before I was born, all the way up to 1994, the year I got married. The show was actually responsible for launching the careers of Andrea McCardle. You might remember it's at Annie, Sister Sledge, Teddy Pendergrass. So there's some good stuff there. And it was also a huge influence, a major influence on Tim and Eric. So you're probably wondering, why was this variety show an influence on Tim and Eric? All right, I'm just going to preface this by saying I feel bad for everything I'm about to say going forward. Because Alalberts seemed like he was a genuinely nice guy. He seemed, really nice. But Alalberts Showcase was frightening. Like if they decide they're going to show it in reruns, they're going to have to show it on Shudder. The supermarket up the street from me, the Acme, it is built on the former grounds of Moynissessing Prison, where they hanged America's first serial killer, H.H. Holmes. I would rather spend the night alone in that supermarket, the haunted supermarket, than turn out the lights in here and watch 10 minutes of the Alalberts 1979 year-end wrap-up. And there will be a link, and you will watch it, and you will complain. So you're probably wondering, okay, Rodney, what made this variety show a virtual horror show? This basically came down to the teeny boppers. The teeny boppers were a group of little children, usually under the age of 6. They had bad haircuts and even a worse grasp of the English language. They would sing and dance and tell jokes. And again, I'm saying tell jokes widest possible sense. The segment with the jokes would usually go like this. Al would sit down and go, hey, little Billy, I understand you have a riddle for us. And then little Billy would go, Uncle Al, why chicken? Chicken Road. Why Chicken Road? Uncle Al. And my father would hate watching this show every Saturday. And he would sit there and he would mock these little children and go, Dad, 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 Dad. And he would just think, he would compliment me by saying, I am so happy you're not a moron like this kid. There were also, I remember a group of them were called the Showstoppers. And I remember my mom saying they were called that because they were the thing that would actually make you stop watching the show and change the channel. So I was trying to find out what the deal was with the Showstoppers. I was looking in to see what, were they little kids? Were they older? I kind of remember them being a bit older. So I went on Wikipedia and I found, and I'm not overselling this, I found what I believe to be the greatest paragraph on Wikipedia. So here we go. La, 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 la. And this is talking about the Showstoppers and the people on the show. Most memorable, a young Andrew Pica made his debut on the show and would later go on to be a frequent guest and showstopper. Andrew would not go on to be a Hollywood star. It says that if you wrote that, if you put that entry in Wikipedia, find us and tell us what Andrew Pika did to hurt you to make you do that.
Did it say citation needed, or it was legit?
It's just there. It's a nice little thing about how he was like, and he would not go on to be a Hollywood star. It's like the setup for a supervillain. Like he's all deformed and living in the sewer, like, gets my revenge. So the one thing I do remember about the little kids, sometimes the teeny boppers would start to sing and they'd mess up, and they would always blame the band. And the band was called Marty Caruso and his orchestra. So there's one guy, Marty Caruso, who played piano, and his orchestra was a guy on drums and a guy on upright bass. And the kids would go, the kids would mess up and they go, he played wrong thing. He played wrong thing. They would just, So I used to get Marty Caruso confused with Marty Shapiro, or actually they pronounced it Marty Shapiro, but it was Marty Shapiro. He used to have a shoe store out in West Philly. He was their main sponsor. And I always, to this day, I can hear it in my head because it's so creepy. They had a little jingle that went, Marty Shapiro loves kids. I'm like, I wouldn't go. His shoe store was the Neverland Ranch of its day. People, I am just touching lightly upon the horror that was this show. So what happened with this was back in, I think, 74, there was a guy named, I believe, Gordon Sinclair, which is the most Canadian name ever. He was a Canadian broadcaster, and he made this record. And it was called like a Canadian Speaks Up for America or something. If you get a chance, find Father Guido Sarducci did a parody of it that was great. He was like, when President Kennedy was assassinated, no Central American country loaned us their president the way we did for them. But anyway, getting away from that. So Al Alberts, because this Gordon Sinclair thing is everywhere, he decided to put out an album called a single called I Am a Sick American. And my family, being the flaming shitheels that we are, we of course sent away for it so we can make fun of it in our home. But I'm going to read from you from the beginning of I Am a Sick American. Let me just adjust it. I have it on both screens here. There are those who claim that ours is a sick society, that our country is sick, that we are sick. Well, maybe they're right. I submit that I'm sick, and maybe you are too. Oh, you're sick, all right. But the best part is, talk about the duality of man, like the peace sign on the helmet with Born to Kill. Talk about the duality of man, the Jungian thing. I'm a Sick American was backed with Al's old song, Try a Little Love, that he would end every show with. And this song sticks in my head because my mother would walk around the house singing. The song goes like, try a little love, you'll be surprised what love can do. And my mom would walk around the house singing, try a couple drugs, you'll be surprised what drugs can do. So you could say the show gave me my start as a songwriter, because I used to love when my mom did that. Like, I thought everybody's mom walked around the house making fun of stuff like that. And I had like friends over and they were shocked. But so to sum up, if Al Albert's showcase were a cryptid, it would be the Dover Demon. Very few people have heard of it. Even fewer have seen it. But those who have seen it will never forget it. So did any of you guys ever see Al Albert's showcase?
Oh, yeah, I watched it a few times. I was going to ask you, I can't remember, was Al Albert's claim to fame, he was in like the Four Aces or the Four...
He was in the Four Aces, which is a weird famous thing because they broke up, and then they actually had the song Three Coins in the Fountain. I think they got nominated for an Oscar for the
Oscar or Grammy or whatever
for the song. Yeah, well, actually, because it was in a movie. It's in the movie. I forget what movie it is, and they so it was the soundtrack was nominated. So I think they were nominated. But the thing about the Four Aces is, or the Four Ace of Spades, if you want to do that, the Four Aces is that they broke up, and some other bands started calling themselves the Four Aces. So they sued them. And then the judge found that, well, you're not calling yourselves the Four Aces anymore. So this other band could be the Four Aces. So people, if you want to start calling yourself the Beatles, there's probably legal precedent there. And Al Alberts also wrote On the Way to Cape May, which is a big song here. But yeah, I'm not busting on Al or his wife Stella. They seem really nice. Like, like you go over their house for a big Italian meal, is probably a great time. But man, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night screaming, just hearing the teeny boppers telling jokes.
Was that And was that on? We didn't think about or talk about the Larry Ferrari show. Was that on before or after Larry?
It came on right before, I believe, Larry Ferrari. Folks, Larry Ferrari was a guy who used to play the organ, and here in Philadelphia for decades. That was on Saturday. It was just a guy sitting playing the organ, and it was Larry Ferrari and his magic organ. Which, about the time you get to be 10 or 11 years old, and they start doing the jokes like, yeah, I hear he's pretty good on piano, but he sucks on the organ or whatever. Like, it's Larry Ferrari, who again was a nice guy. I don't want to make fun of Larry Ferrari. We could do a whole show on Philadelphia children's shows, and I might be, when we get to Dean, I might be looping back to that. So Joe, before you pop up here, I want to point out that right around Christmas time, just a few feet from where I live, they found a headless body wrapped in plastic in a freezer in somebody's basement. Dead bodies in basements, a big Philly thing. I'm not joking. So Joe, would you like to tell us maybe what other frightening thing Philadelphians might have in their freezers?
They might have this amazing breakfast meat that is peculiar not only to Philadelphia City, but to the Philadelphia region. And it's known now as Scrapple. And Scrapple is a variant of black or blood pudding, and it comes from Germany. At least that is what the Encyclopedia of Greater Philadelphia's entry on Scrapple tells me. It's made basically of everything of the pig after all that is harvested of the pig can be harvested, including sausage making, is left over. They say everything but the oink is used, boiled up in a vat of water for
Where's the oink go?
several hours.
Everything but the oink is also the motto of the Alalberts show.
It's boiled up in a vat of water, which is drained, and then it's chopped or pureed, and added to that is cornmeal and buckwheat for thickeners, and then some spices, which consists mostly of the savory herb and sage, and maybe some pepper. And it's molded into something this is Scrapple right here, into this shape usually. And what people usually do is fry it. Some people deep fry it, but mostly it's pan fried and served as a side dish. Or I always say the best way, Scrapple tastes best when you're very hungry. So the best way to serve it is hungry.
I've tried it once.
I actually like it, but for breakfast, I mean, it pairs very well with runny eggs, and it's best served in, I think, 1/4-inch slices. I've been at diners that served it in thicker slices. I didn't like it as much, but where it's fried, crunchy, and you don't need, you can put it in a pan, and it's so greasy. You don't need to oil the pan, whatever it is. It produces its own grease immediately. So brown it till it's not quite, it's browned on the outside, but still creamy and warm on the inside. And if it's not warm, it's disgusting. You got to have it warm. So that's Scrapple for you. I don't know why it hasn't caught on past this region, but it came from the Pennsylvania Dutch, who were really from Germany. They're not Dutch. That's a misnomer. And they settled around the Lancaster area, and this recipe came with them. It was originally called Panhaus, which means pan rabbit, and it never really contained any rabbit. That's just what they called it in German, and that's what the Amish, who the Pennsylvania Dutch, called it too. But you would think the name Scrapple came from the Englishification of what they would call a piece of Scrapple, Panhaus Scrapple.
You keep calling it Scrabble?
So
You keep calling it Scrabble?
No, he's saying Scrapple. He says Scrapple, but he's got a thick Philly accent.
All right.
Scrapple. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You guys can't appreciate the articulation of a Philadelphia.
This company, Haverset, which I think makes excellent Scrapple, if you're looking to taste a good one.
Yeah, like being the thinnest kid in fat camp is being the best person who makes the best Scrapple.
They apparently also, according to the same entry I read, they were formed by Joshua Haberset, and they made the first Scrapple ever that was mass produced during the Civil War when it was necessary to have mass produced food.
It was actually formed into bullets and fired at the
Anyway,
What do I do?
Because
that's
no
my
one would eat it.
jawn.
Oh, God.
Weird for that's my jawn.
Yeah, that's your jawn. Joe, did you ever watch Scrapple TV?
No.
Oh, Scrapple TV. Scrapple was so
Oh
people.
yeah,
so,
I did that. I did watch some of that. It was on
Yeah.
the internet also.
Yeah, it's on the internet now. It used to be on like DUTV.
Yeah, I did
It's
see it.
we'll put up a link. Yeah, Scrapple was so endemic to Philadelphia. We had a series of TV shows that they used to lump together under the title of Scrapple TV because very Philadelphia.
WKDU put out a bunch of compilation records called Scrapple, like maybe like 25 years ago.
Okay.
30.
And there was Scrapple Fest for a while every year too. I don't know if that's still going on.
So we'll move on to Dan. Now, Dan, as you know, Earth Day started right here in Philadelphia. In fact, yeah, the man who started it later killed his girlfriend and kept her in a trunk on his back porch for decades before fleeing to France and then being brought back here. That was Ira Einhorn. So is there any other fun Philadelphia thing you'd like to tell us about, Dan?
I'd like to talk about certain parts of pavement in Philadelphia. I was probably about 15 or 16, walking around Philly, I think on South Street, crossing a street, and looked down, saw what I thought was a piece of trash, but there were words, and it said, "Resurrect the Dead on Jupiter." And this was my introduction to the Toynbee tiles. Now, I don't even know where to begin with this because it's still mysterious. Nobody really knows. But there's a documentary that talks about it, and I'm not going to say anything about it. For one thing, I don't want to spoil it, and also, I don't really remember. It was over 10 years ago I watched it. I like keeping it a mystery anyway. Because,
I'm going to ruin it for you then.
no, you're not.
No,
Well,
yeah.
So when you look at them, they all seem to have the same kind of like font. It's like somebody has cut the letters out, and there's theories that it's linoleum or it's plastic. Apparently, people could be putting tar paper down, and when the cars run over it, it like gets into the pavement, because that's the biggest mystery is how, like, some of these, one of them is on like an entrance ramp for a highway. It's like, how do you, like, you get like cold patch asphalt or something? And like, so, yeah, the weirdest part is trying to uncover like what the connections are between, like, that Stanley Kubrick is mentioned. What is it, Arnold Toynbee?
Yeah, Arnold J. Toynbee, yes. It sounds like something you'd make up.
Right? I've got my toy and my bee. And then 2001, Space Odyssey, Resurrect the Dead on Jupiter. Now, when you look at what Toynbee was talking about, it was very vague, like allusions to people coming, like body and soul and the separation, and maybe we could somehow resurrect it. I don't know where like Jupiter came in, but I think Stanley Kubrick or Arthur C. Clarke may have been inspired by some of that when he wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, this I thought was the craziest part. David Mamet, who is a famous playwright, wrote a short play called 4 a.m. And it's basically just a dialogue between a radio DJ, who's like a Larry King kind of host, and a guy calling in and basically espousing these like kind of broken, fragmented philosophies. And he claims that he made it up. Yet when you look into it, there was like a Philadelphia Inquirer article talking about a fellow that called, I think it was Larry King, or called something.
Yeah, I thought it was a local station, but yeah.
Like doing basically the same thing. So did David Mamet like come across that, or I don't know. So it's a very mysterious thing. And I don't know. I guess here's the thing though. It's not uniquely Philadelphia. It may have started in Philadelphia. There was apparently one in Brazil, and we're gonna keep or have a link to an interactive map that shows you where the extant ones are and the extinct ones are. And there are 3 little dots in South America saying that there at least at some point were some tiles there.
Yeah, there was one in Sao Paulo. I live within 2 or 3 minutes of 3 of them. There used to be 5, but the ones over on McKean Street were just recently taken out of there.
How are they getting rid of them?
When the city comes and paves over, that's how they usually go. Yeah. But also New Yorkers. We have people that move down here from New York, and they think it's cool to take them. And so I just want to let you people know this. If you try to take a Toynbee thing up, pull the whole thing up, just go to some part of the world and get yourself tortured, because that is nothing compared to what people will do to you if they catch you do it. A friend of mine, a few years back, he saw a guy try to take one over on Passyunk, and the guy came running out of the store and just started punching him in the head. We take them very seriously. I have a piece of one. I wanted to bring it up. I keep it in a little glass thing along with a brick from the pet store that Adrienne used to work in Rocky, because I found one. Somebody had tried to get one. It was broken up, and I thought, well, let me at least save one piece of this. I have a little piece of it. Yeah, Mr. Toynbee, if you had to do any sort of poli-sci thing, you probably came across him. He had this weird theory that it was called like challenge and resolution, that, that history was made by societies being challenged, and then they would find a resolution, which falls apart the minute you begin to think about it. It's like Kennedy was challenged by the Cold War, and his resolution was to get shot in the head. I mean, it's just, obviously not everything is planned out. Yeah, the Toynbee tiles are fascinating. There is a documentary. In the documentary, they do, I don't know if they actually name him. They use the alias that he used, and but you can find the name of the man who was actually
James Marasco or something.
Yeah, that was the alias that he used, was Marasco. But somebody put his real name up there. Please don't look up his real name. I think he still lives on South 7th Street. Don't bother him. He used to do the tiles by having a van with a sliding floor thing, and he would cut out the tiles, and whenever the city would go up and pave something, he put it down. Now, for a long time, there was a really creepy, huge one at 16th and I think 16th and Chestnut, and it was anti-Semitic. And this was many years ago, so this is before we would have thought that Conway could have put it there.
And the guy, he's attacking John Knight from Knight Ritter, like the newspaper tycoon. Like, there's a lot of those. He's specifically attacking this guy. Yeah, I sent you guys over the pictures of the 3 of them that are near me. One of the ones near me is definitely an original. 2 of them they think are later installments. But yeah, it's whenever I go past where one used to be and it's gone, man, I get a really sad feeling inside, because I love those things, as crazy as they are. They're so Philadelphian, and you still see sites that'll claim it's a uniquely New York thing. And I'm like, no, it isn't. They do the same thing with Duchamp. They'll show the Duchamp stuff at the museum, and they'll say, and this is in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I'm like, no, it isn't. All right, so that takes us now to Dean. Dean, why don't you and Gene London climb aboard Captain Noah's magical ark and sail on over to the Melrose Diner and tell us a little bit about Philadelphia cuisine? I think there's something you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I want to talk about the hoagie. So around the country, a sandwich on a long roll goes by many different names. You might hear it described as a sub, a hero, a grinder. But in Philadelphia, to call this type of sandwich anything besides hoagie is sacrilege. The term itself, a little bit of history, was coined in Philly, and I believe it can be traced back to World War I, when Italian immigrants were working in the shipyards outside the city, and the shipyard was known as Hog Island. This is basically where the Philadelphia airport is right now. And a common lunch item there at the time was a sandwich made with layered meat, cheese, and lettuce, and it became locally known as the Hog Island sandwich. And so over time, it was shortened to Hoggies, which then some think due to the mid-Atlantic accent transmitted to hoagie.
Delco.
Hoagie. There are a couple of other theories. Some food historians credit street vendors who in the early 1900s would sell salads, meats, and buns. These hokey pokey men, as they were known, would sometimes create makeshift sandwiches by stuffing the salads and meats into the bread. Others also say that the Italian community in South Philadelphia, the term on the hoke was used to refer to someone who was broke. And so if you went to a deli and you were like not able to pay, sometimes the deli owner would take pity on you and he would give you like scraps of bread and meat and cheese.
Here's a hoagie.
Yeah, so here's a hoagie. The Italian immigrants' accent changed the pronunciation to hoagie. So anyway, so moving on. So how much leeway do you think can be taken with what's on a hoagie until it doesn't really fit the definition anymore?
None.
So,
None.
So locally, you have two groups of people. You have the hoagie traditionalists, of which I am one, and another group I'll refer to as crumb bums, which is a Frank Rizzo term.
Yeah.
We could do a whole show on Frank Rizzo.
We could have done a whole thing, yeah.
Their difference can be summed up in this statement. So if you are a traditional, you will never accept a hoagie with mayonnaise on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So a hoagie has meat, cheese, lettuce, tomato, onion, oil and vinegar, maybe some hoagie seasoning, maybe some long hots or roasted pepper. That's it.
Yeah.
If you see any mayonnaise when you walk into a deli on their hoagies, walk out. A classic hoagie should never, ever, ever have mayo on it.
I am married to a South Philly Italian, and this is a hard, fast rule that I agree with.
Okay, so another bit of information. So you may well ask, what is the difference between a hoagie, a sub, a grinder, or a hero? So a hoagie is closely related to Italian meats and cheese. That's definitely a Philadelphia thing. A sub is more widely used outside of the Philly area. Subs can be cold or toasted. They can have things other than Italian meats and cheeses in them. A favorite sub of mine might be like a meatball sub with hot meatballs, hot balls, tomato sauce, and melty mozzarella cheese. So what is a grinder? A grinder is a New England term used to describe subs with specifically hot fillings. Otherwise, in New England, they use the sub term for cold-filled sandwiches on the long roll. And a hero is strictly a New York term for a bread roll sandwich, most commonly connected with like a chicken parm or a meatball sandwich. If you're not hungry by now, I don't know what's wrong with you. But wait, what's this? There's a sandwich out there called the Weber. Have you ever heard of the Weber?
What?
The Weber is a local sandwich invented about 40 years ago in the Quakertown area, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia, by a fellow named Joseph Weber. He went to, Raji, you're going to love this, he went to Smitty's restaurant on Route 309, and he wanted a steak sandwich without the usual tomato sauce and onions. And instead, he asked for a steak sandwich with lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and the roll had to have mayo on it. And this is still on some menus up in Upper Bucks County near Quakertown, known as the Weber.
It's a cheesesteak hoagie. You know, you got the lettuce, tomato, and onion make it the hoagie part of the cheesesteak.
But mayo, the mayo.
No mayo.
Mayo on everything.
Oil, no mayo.
Nothing. Mayo on nothing
He
ever.
didn't even specify cheese on his though. It's
Yeah.
just like steak and lettuce, tomato, and onion and mayo.
I live in South Philly, and the greatest hoagies in the world, along with dead bodies and freezers, are right outside my door. Yeah. Also, a grinder is also this app on my phone.
Yeah, right.
It's Governor DeSantos. I wonder what he wants.
So anyway, that's the story of hoagie. The hoagie is definitely a Philadelphia thing. If you come to Philadelphia, I'll definitely go out and have a hoagie with you.
Yeah. I right near Pesta Pizzeria, and they make the best, and I think the best in South Philly. Speaking of Frank Rizzo and Hog Island, when they had the contest for the Rizzo statue, I entered with something called the Colossus of Hog Island. It was a giant Frank Rizzo that would straddle Long Island and Philadelphia, the Delaware, so you could send boats up between his legs. And in one hand, he had a nightstick, and in the other hand, he had a hoagie, and they both shot flames. And I sent that in, and I used to have the rejection letter for it for years. All right, my first recommendation is from, oh, by the way, this is for music that you won't hear on television or see on the radio or whatever, but actually last Saturday night, there was something great on Saturday Night Live. There was an actual great music act, Sam Smith. I always fast forward over the musical acts. I watch it later on Peacock, but this guy was really, really good. His first song sounded like Aesthetic Perfection, and his second song was basically a performance art piece with Sharon Stone. It was the first really good thing I've seen on Saturday Night Live in well over a decade. I was amazed. The first good musical act. So good for you, Sam. Moving on to another musical act, I want to recommend for you folks Lana Del Rabies. Not to be confused with Lana Del Rey, who did not have a good time on Saturday Night Live when she was on, or the Lana Del Race for the Cure. This is Lana Del Rabies is an artist out of, I believe, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a big fan. She's got a new album coming out called Strega Beta, and there's a song from it I just heard called A Plague, and it is fantastic, and it bodes well for the rest of the album. So when you get a chance, please get that. Last week, when I was talking about the movie The Menu, I said, wow, you can actually hear the actors. You don't have to turn on the subtitles. And there were a lot of knowing nods amongst the other milkmen. I found out, I did a little research, and I found a video called Why We All Need Subtitles Now. And it explained why you have to turn on the subtitles when watching a movie. It's a lot of different things. One, increase in mic technology means they didn't have to use one mic for people to project into. They could mic the individual actors, allowing them to speak more naturally. And there's also a lot of directors are flaming shitheels who purposely bury the sound. When I watched that movie, I could understand Anna Taylor-Joy and I could understand Ray Fiennes because they were doing something I'm doing right now. It's called enunciating. You people can hear me, you can understand me because I took some basic public speaking classes and acting classes. So I'm just saying, maybe we've isolated the problem not to the technology, but to the actors and directors. And finally, and a film that you will need subtitles for because it's not in English, it's called Saloum, and it came out in 2021, and it is fantastic. It is a Western, but it's a Western that takes place in Senegal in 2021. It's basically the old idea. You used to see these old Sergio Leone films where some people would ride into town and the town, they'd be outlaws in the town. There'd be something spooky about it. That's what this is. This film is great and you should see it. So it's called Saloum and go out and check that out. All right. Thank you. We got to keep moving.
I'd like to recommend another Philly-centric product that you can consume with your mouth. It's a beer from Yards, or any beer from Yards, actually. But they have this IPA series out now that is pretty good. Maybe you should try
Can
it.
you still get, not beer, but can you still get black cherry Wishniak?
No. Frank's, no. They don't even have the soda machines on the corners anymore.
Anyway, moving
You
on.
can get it. I think you can get it.
Moving
People
on.
sell it. Yeah, people sell it at a high markup online. You may be able to find it online, but yeah.
I would like to recommend anybody who is interested in the Toynbee tiles to one, watch that documentary, which I'm going to do again. I think it's called Resurrect the Dead. And two, check out the interactive map. For some reason, when you zoom in and click on a point, it doesn't show you the picture of the tile, but maybe that's a little too complex. But it will show you where they are in the world. And it is just in the Western Hemisphere, it seems, but most of them are in the Philadelphia, Jersey area. So yeah, check that out.
If you collate it with the best hoagies in the world, you can triangulate on where I live.
So yeah, I am also going to recommend something that's related to the hoagie, which is I found a great video put out by ABC 6 Discovery, which I think is related to our local Channel 6 radio TV station. It's called The History of the Philadelphia Hoagie. And in about 6 or 7 minutes, it gives you a great overview of where the hoagie came from and what's involved. And it even shows you a South Philly guy making a hoagie. So check it out, okay? You just got to check it out.
And folks, we just scratched the surface on how truly weird Philly is. Every now and then I'll be in another city and it'll say like Austin, though, keep Austin weird. And I'm like, what's so weird? They go, oh, we've got a guy that wears a gorilla suit and juggles. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, the guy who just ran for DA as a Republican down here had a segment on his website called The Girl in the Bathtub, and which was basically like, don't believe those TV movies. I didn't kill that girl. And he was also the lawyer for Gary Heidnik.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he's the one who said to Gary Heidnik, because Gary Heidnik was sitting there describing, cooking the bodies, and he said he couldn't take it anymore, which is understandable. And he just said, so Gary, what kind of seasoning do you use with a head? And Gary Heidnik went, something wrong with you, man. And his father was also a famous defense attorney who once defended a guy who robbed a bank, and it was a bank that his father had applied to for a credit card and got denied. And the guy who robbed the bank got approved for a credit card from that bank while he was in jail. So good luck topping that. Yeah. Good luck topping. We have Father Divine, Frank Rizzo. Gail,
oh, yeah, we could do another
Mikey
show
Wild.
on Philadelphia.
Yeah, Gritty. Yeah, we could keep going. Mikey Wild, Harrison Marty Graham. Remember him? He strangled people to death with Cookie Monster puppet. Yeah, we have. And then there were good people like Smoking Joe Frazier, Crazy Joe Bonaparte, who dug up my old neighborhood because he was crazy and he was Napoleon's brother. Yeah, Mario Lanza. I am Mario Lanza. It just, it goes on forever, people. Yeah, I mean, we could go into, it goes all the way back to The Monks of Monk Hall, which was America's first best-selling novel, and it is twisted. It is really sick. So, yeah, well, maybe in the future we will do another one of these, because we have, I'm just looking at the list over here. We didn't even touch on the Eraserhood. We didn't get to the Mutter Museum. There's just a ton of things. The first host of American Bandstand was a horrible, horrible person. So, yeah.
We should do this like semi-regularly then.
Semi-regularly, return to Philadelphia.